The digital clock on my ancient, cracked smartphone, a device I clung to with the tenacity of a drowning man, its screen a spider web of hairline fractures, glowed 3:47 a.m. Its dim, sickly light cast long, shifting shadows across the cramped, threadbare walls of my rented room, illuminating dust motes dancing in the stagnant air. Another restless night had dissolved into the bleak gray pre-dawn, a familiar enemy. The worn springs of my mattress groaned beneath me with every subtle shift of my aching body, each metallic creak echoing the constant, grating friction in my own existence, a desolate symphony of quiet desperation that played out in my ears. I didn't even need to open a banking app. The number, a permanent searing brand of failure, was indelibly etched into my brain, haunting my waking moments and invading my fitful, anxiety-ridden dreams. 40-17. It wasn't just a numerical value, a simple balance. It was a screaming, taunting indictment of my life, a constant whisper of my utter inadequacy. It was the precise tally of every ambition I'd squandered, every opportunity I'd hesitated on, every dream I'd let wither and die under the relentless, unforgiving sun of hard, brutal reality. My name is Daniel. I'm 35 years old, though. The profound fatigue etched into the deep lines around my eyes, the persistent ache in my lower back, and the constant, high-pitched thrum of anxiety in my chest often made me feel twice that age. A weary veteran of countless silent battles I'd fought and more often than not silently lost. For the past 4 agonizing, soul-crushing years, my existence had been defined by the harsh, relentless hum of fluorescent lights, the deafening roar of conveyor belts, and the rhythmic, mind-numbing clang of forklifts in a sprawling, anonymous warehouse on the industrial fringes of the city. It was a place devoid of personality, where individuality was not just discouraged, but actively stripped away, replaced by a uniform of sweat-stained work clothes, worn-out safety boots that offered little comfort and less dignity, and a cold, impersonal badge number. I was merely another anonymous cog, easily replaceable, utterly disposable, in a gigantic, indifferent machine that relentlessly churned profits for someone else, while Daniel, the man, barely scraped by, living hand to mouth, trapped in a cycle of poverty and despair. Every single morning, the pre-dawn darkness felt like a physical, suffocating weight pressing down on my chest, threatening to crush the last vestiges of hope that I clung to so tenuously. The shrill, insistent shriek of my alarm was less a wake-up call and more a summons to another day of futile battle against an unseen, omnipresent enemy. Poverty, the bitter, watery taste of instant coffee on my tongue, the metallic tang of desperation, mingling with the cheap caffeine, the frantic, undignified dash to catch the city bus, often missing it by agonizing seconds and cursing under my breath, my lungs burning from the sprint, then crammed in, shoulder to shoulder with other equally weary ghosts of early risers. It was a daily ritual of profound, quiet resignation, a performance of defeat. Daniel's life felt like a monotonous, soul-crushing loop, a treadmill set on an impossible incline I could never hope to conquer, always out of breath, always teetering precariously on the edge of utter collapse. Financial precarity wasn't just a shadow that followed me. It was my constant, unwelcome companion. A sinister specter always lurking in the periphery of my vision, always threatening to engulf me entirely in its cold, unforgiving embrace. Every single paycheck, barely enough to begin with, seemed to vanish before it even touched my bank account. It was a desperate scramble to cover the absolute basics, the ever-increasing rent for our tiny, cramped apartment, the relentless utility bills that seemed to arrive even faster than I could pay them, the cheapest, most filling food available, to stretch meager funds, leaving nothing, absolutely nothing, for living, for breathing, for dreaming, for anything beyond mere painful existence. Debt was a constant, insidious presence, a malignant tumor growing larger, more oppressive. With each passing month, each mounting interest payment on the multiple credit cards I used just to buy groceries, just to cover basic necessities that a family deserved. I, Daniel, was perpetually denying myself and my beloved family the simplest comforts, the smallest, most innocent joys. A decent meal out at a local diner, a new book from the bookstore, a trip to the movies with the kids. These were extravagant luxuries beyond my wildest dreams, reserved for a different class of people, a world I could only glimpse from afar, through the hazy glass of my bus window. The humiliation. God, the humiliation. It was a raw, festering wound that never quite healed, picked at constantly by the thorns of self-doubt and the sharp talons of external judgment. I'd lost count of the times I'd stood at the grocery store checkout, a carefully calculated basket filled with the cheapest, most basic essentials: store-brand pasta, generic canned vegetables, day-old bread, the blandest cuts of meat, my heart pounding like a drum against my ribs, a desperate prayer forming in my throat, begging to some unknown, indifferent force that my debit card wouldn't flash. Insufficient funds. The burning, scorching shame of having to mumble an embarrassed apology to the cashier, who looked at me with a mixture of pity and barely concealed annoyance, their eyes quickly moving on to the next customer, then slowly, painstakingly hand items back, one by one, watching them replace my discarded aspirations on the shelves. It was a physical blow, a punch to the gut that left me breathless, my face flushed with unbearable heat. Each removed item, a fresh, stinging wound to my dignity. Or the week my decrepit car, my only true symbol of independence, my only escape from the relentless cycle of bus routes and weary walks, finally coughed its last pathetic breath on the side of the highway, leaving a lingering trail of acrid smoke and broken promises. I remembered standing there watching the steam rise, feeling utterly helpless. For weeks I walked to work, miles through the biting winter wind and driving rain, my cheap shoes soaked through, my body shivering, enduring the pitying glances of my colleagues, their polite but distant inquiries about my situation, their unspoken judgments hanging in the air like a heavy, suffocating fog, a constant, chilling reminder of my meager, desperate existence. They meant well, perhaps, but their sympathy felt like another form of humiliation, another sign of my failure as Daniel. The absolute lowest point, however, wasn't a sudden, cataclysmic event, but a slow, agonizing slide into the abyss, a gradual descent into despair that felt like drowning in quicksand, each struggle only pulling me deeper. Our ancient refrigerator, a noisy, clanking relic from the previous tenant, its yellowed exterior and peeling seal a testament to decades of neglect, finally gave up the ghost one sweltering summer evening. The putrid smell of spoiling food, the last of our fresh groceries paid for with precious hard-earned dollars, food that I had hoped would last us until payday, until I could replenish our meager pantry, filled our tiny, airless apartment, making our stomachs churn and our eyes water. My wife, Sarah, her eyes brimming with unshed tears that she bravely tried to hide behind a forced, trembling smile, her voice barely a whisper, thick with unspoken fear, had asked, "What are we going to do, Daniel? The kids need milk. The baby formula won't last until next week. How will we keep food fresh?" And I, her husband, her supposed protector and provider, the man who should have all the answers, all the solutions, had absolutely no answer, no solution, no shred of hope to offer. The silence that followed was deafening, heavier than any words, filled with unspoken accusations and my own crushing guilt. The next morning I swallowed my pride, a bitter, metallic taste coating my tongue, and made the call I dreaded most, the call that symbolized my utter failure to provide, my complete inability to protect my family. I called my estranged uncle, a man who had always viewed me with thinly veiled disdain, a man who measured success only in dollars and cents, who openly flaunted his own wealth and achievements at every family gathering, subtly undermining me, his condescending tone, the way he savored my vulnerability, drawing out my plea for help, making me feel like an object of charity, a lesser being, a pathetic, worthless failure, burned hotter than any fever. So, the big university graduate needs handouts, does he? I always knew you weren't cut out for anything real, Daniel. Just stick to your warehouse job. It's about your speed. Don't go trying to be something you're not. It's unbecoming. He'd sneered, his words like daggers, twisted with malicious pleasure, hitting every raw nerve, piercing my already fragile self-esteem. That conversation, that forced humility, those searing words etched themselves into my very soul, becoming a permanent, disfiguring scar, a constant agonizing reminder of how low I had fallen, how utterly helpless Daniel had become. Can you truly imagine the corrosive mix of shame, helplessness, and boiling, impotent resentment that festers in those moments, eating away at your spirit, leaving you hollow? It strips away your dignity, piece by agonizing piece, until you feel utterly hollow, a ghost in your own skin, barely a person anymore, just a shell of who you once were, burdened by an invisible weight. My past was certainly not a tale of privilege or inherent advantage. I, Daniel, grew up in a typical working-class neighborhood, surrounded by similar struggles, similar cycles of poverty and striving. My parents good, honest people who worked tirelessly, often juggling multiple minimum-wage jobs, often until their hands were raw and their backs ached, but who never seemed to get ahead, always chasing the elusive tail of financial security that danced just out of reach. They instilled in me the fundamental value of hard work, a strong, unyielding work ethic, teaching me that effort was paramount, that diligence would be rewarded, but they couldn't teach me how to escape the systemic cycle that trapped so many, like us, how to break free from the invisible chains of inherited struggle. University was a distant, almost mythical concept, a dream whispered about in hushed tones, but rarely achieved in our community, seen as something for other people, for the privileged few who didn't have to worry about tuition. My attendance was only made possible by a mountain of student loans that would haunt me for years, a crushing burden that added to my existing anxieties, a phantom weight on my shoulders, and a relentless schedule of part-time jobs, busing, tables at a greasy diner, stocking shelves at a late-night convenience store, tutoring struggling high school students in math, anything to make an extra dollar, to buy myself a little more time, a little more breathing room. This left me perpetually on the brink of physical and mental collapse, surviving on fumes, running on pure adrenaline and desperation, my mind a constant fog of fatigue. I managed to scrape through, earning a degree that ironically felt more like a participation trophy, a cruel joke than a genuine key to a brighter, more prosperous future. It hung on my wall, collecting dust, a mocking reminder of unfulfilled potential, a symbol of a promise that never materialized. Then came the warehouse job, a seeming lifeline at first, a guaranteed paycheck, a temporary reprieve from the absolute abyss of unemployment and homelessness. But it quickly transformed into an anchor, slowly, inexorably dragging me deeper into stagnation, into a life of quiet desperation, a dead end with no discernible exit. I worked hard, I genuinely did. My hands were often raw and calloused, permanently stained with grime, my back aching chronically, my shoulders permanently slumped from years of lifting heavy boxes. But the effort felt utterly futile, like running on a treadmill that was constantly accelerating, and I was always falling, behind, never gaining ground, never making progress, just burning myself out day after agonizing day. My dream, back then, the very concept of a dream felt like a cruel, unattainable luxury, a whimsical fantasy reserved for others, for those born into different circumstances, into different families, with different opportunities, people who didn't have to worry about the price of milk or the cost of a broken appliance. My only aspiration, my only driving force was bare survival, the desperate daily struggle to keep my head above water, just one more day, one more week, one more month. Daniel was simply trying to survive. Perhaps that's why, amidst the dull, monotonous thrum of my everyday despair, a tiny, almost imperceptible flicker of something sparked. It was a typical evening commute on the rattling, crowded city bus, the windows fogged with condensation, the air thick with stale sweat and cheap perfume, crammed in, shoulder to shoulder, with other weary souls heading home after their own grueling days. I was staring blankly out the grimy window, watching the city lights blur into indistinct streaks, feeling the familiar heavy weight of resignation settling over me, like a shroud, when I overheard a snippet of conversation from the seats directly ahead of me. Two men, sharply dressed in impeccably tailored suits, their voices hushed but confident, exuding an air of quiet authority, were discussing the city council's ambitious plans to redevelop an old, forgotten industrial zone near the bustling port. They spoke of sleek modern condominiums, innovative tech hubs, and a complete revitalization of the entire area, hinting at massive multi-million-dollar financial investments and a surge in property values that would transform the district, turning a blighted area into a gold mine. For them, it was just local news, a casual business-as-usual conversation about urban planning, another Tuesday discussion over their expensive briefcases. For me, however, it was a sudden, jarring jolt to my system, a visceral awakening, a shockwave through my stagnant existence. A thought, faint but insistent, echoed in my mind, cutting through the haze of my exhaustion like a razor blade, sharper than any pain I had felt. Opportunity. This was just a whisper at first, a tiny seed planted in the barren ground of my despair, a fragile thing, easily crushed. It wasn't a fully formed idea, just a prickle of awareness, a vague, unsettling sense that something in the world was shifting, something big, something I might, just might, be able to latch onto, to ride the tide, to break free. It was a tiny crack in the impenetrable wall of my hopelessness, letting in a sliver of unexpected precious light, and, for the first time in a long time, Daniel felt a faint stir of curiosity, a flicker of something beyond numb despair. My daily routine was a suffocating, mind-numbing, and physically punishing cycle. The jarring alarm at 6 a.m., a jolt of dread that sent a cold shiver down my spine, forcing down a quick, tasteless breakfast of instant oatmeal or a piece of stale, toast and bitter black coffee often eaten standing up. Then the relentless, urgent race to the bus stop, often running the last block, lungs burning, heart pounding, praying I wouldn't miss it and incur a penalty at work, a mark against my already precarious employment. Enduring the soul-crushing commute, packed like sardines, the stale air thick with the smell of damp clothes and cheap perfume, the drone of the bus engine a monotonous prelude to my workday, then 8 continuous hours of physically demanding, repetitive labor in the cavernous, echoing warehouse, lifting, stacking, scanning, my muscles screaming in protest, my mind longing for escape, for a moment of quiet, then the long, silent, equally crowded ride home, the drone of the bus engine a monotonous, depressing soundtrack to my bleak thoughts, the city lights blurring outside. Dinner was usually a microwave meal or the cheapest, most filling takeout I could find. A $1 menu burger, a slice of cold pizza, anything to fill the void, to quiet the rumbling in my stomach, followed by endless hours spent hunched over a worn notebook, meticulously calculating bills, the relentless interest rates on my mounting credit card debt, and the grim reality of my rapidly evaporating paycheck. Sleep was a desperate necessity, a brief oblivion, not a comfort or a luxury, merely a temporary reprieve from the pain of existence, a chance to recharge just enough for the next day's battle. But even within that grinding, oppressive cycle, after that fateful bus ride, Daniel began to observe actively, consciously, with a hunger I hadn't known I possessed. My eyes were no longer dulled by perpetual fatigue. They were open, wide, searching, dissecting the world around me, looking for patterns, for anomalies, for anything that could be leveraged. I began noticing the little things, the sudden, explosive popularity of obscure online communities dedicated to incredibly niche hobbies, the seemingly endless stream of targeted advertisements for quirky, specialized products flooding my social media feed, products I'd never even heard of but which seemed to be selling like hotcakes, creating passionate fan bases, generating buzz. I saw how certain small online stores, seemingly run by ordinary individuals from their homes, from their garages, from their spare bedrooms, were making surprisingly substantial sales, generating genuine buzz, creating loyal customer bases without massive overheads. How were they doing it? What was their secret formula? What was I missing? What was the hidden leverage, the trick to unlocking this potential? I didn't have the answers, not yet, but a new compulsion took root, insidious and powerful, eclipsing my exhaustion, eclipsing my despair, replacing them with a burning curiosity, a relentless drive to understand. This was more than just idle curiosity. It was a desperate primal search for a way out, a lifeline to drag myself from the quicksand I was drowning in. What specific step would you have taken in this situation? I, Daniel, decided to simply observe. I would watch the market. I would study the currents, the subtle shifts, the unmet demands, the untapped potential. Where were the openings? Where were the genuine opportunities, the hidden gold mines, the paths to escape? I would just look, just listen, not speak, not act, for now. Every night, long after my tired roommates were asleep, their gentle snores filling the tiny apartment, the only light in our cramped living room emanated from my phone screen, reflecting off my tired, determined face, illuminating the lines of worry and newfound focus. I'd scroll through e-commerce sites, dissecting their product descriptions, analyzing their marketing copy, trying to reverse engineer their success patterns, their customer engagement strategies, their pricing models, their fulfillment methods. I devoured every blog post I could find about online retail strategies, supply chain logistics, digital marketing, SEO, customer relationship management, conversion optimization. Every piece of fragmented information was gold, hoarded and analyzed, categorized and filed away in my overworked mind. It became an obsession, a secret life lived under the cover of darkness, fueled by a growing, desperate hope that this might finally be my chance. My one shot at breaking free, at truly living, at escaping the shadow of 4017. The true turning point wasn't a sudden, blinding flash of epiphany, a dramatic lightning bolt of inspiration that struck me out of the blue, illuminating the path forward with undeniable clarity. No, it was a quiet, insidious dawn, a gradual, sharpening of focus, a slow, painful awakening that built upon weeks of observation and simmering frustration. A subtle shift in the very fabric of my being. It was a particularly brutal shift at the warehouse. A late-night inventory run where I found myself moving heavy pallets of canned goods and industrial cleaning supplies until my back screamed in relentless protest, each muscle fiber burning, my breath ragged, tasting of dust and exhaustion. My hands were raw, blistered and aching, throbbing with a dull, persistent pain, my mind numb with exhaustion. The rhythmic clang of forklifts, a deafening, oppressive drone in the cavernous, echoing space that seemed to consume all light and sound. That night, after a quick cold shower, the hot water heater had finally given up the ghost for good a few days prior, a small, frustrating symbol of our constant struggle, another expense we couldn't afford, and a meager meal of instant ramen, its salty broth the only comfort, its warmth a fleeting illusion. I collapsed onto my worn bed, the glowing screen of my phone a tiny, hypnotic beacon in the suffocating darkness of my room. That's when I stumbled upon it, an article titled, "Dropshipping, Launch Your Business with Zero Capital." The headline alone was an irresistible magnet, pulling my tired, bloodshot eyes closer, promising something too good to be true, something that sounded like a dream. As I read, each word felt like it was written directly to me, for me, speaking to the exact core of my deepest desperation and my unarticulated desire for freedom, for escape from this endless, grinding cycle. It articulated a business concept that seemed almost impossibly simple, a magical loophole in the rigid system of commerce, yet undeniably logical in its simplicity and incredibly low barrier to entry. Zero capital. That phrase echoed in my mind, a powerful resonant mantra, a beacon of dazzling, almost blinding hope in the suffocating darkness of my seemingly inescapable financial reality. This was it. This was the specific, tangible idea that finally crystallized the vague inklings I'd been having, the scattered observations I'd been making, the restless, frustrated energy I'd been accumulating. I, Daniel, would launch my own online sales venture, but with only 4017 in my bank account, a number that seemed to mock my ambition, and absolutely no savings, no safety net, no rich benefactors. How? The sheer audacity of the idea was terrifying, a vertiginous leap into the unknown, a wager of my entire future. It was at that precise, pivotal moment that I made an unwavering, almost sacred pact with myself, a solemn vow whispered into the silent night, a declaration of war against my own circumstances. I would shed the desperation, the shame, the anger, the bitter resentment that had defined my life for far too long, that had consumed me from the inside out. From now on, I would act purely with reason, with cold, hard calculation, with a relentless, unwavering focus, devoid of emotion, driven by pure, unadulterated logic and a hunger I hadn't realized I possessed, a primal hunger for something more, for a different life. This was the absolute, undeniable turning point in my life, the moment Daniel chose to stop merely surviving and start fighting back with every fiber of his being, with every ounce of his will, with every drop of his untapped potential. Do you honestly think this risk was worth taking? Or was it a recklessly foolish gamble? A last desperate throw of the dice into the void? A delusion? My immediate, all-consuming task became an obsessive, almost maniacal pursuit of knowledge. I needed to learn absolutely everything about dropshipping, and I needed to learn it yesterday with an urgency that gnawed at me, consuming my thoughts, dictating every waking moment. Sleep became a forgotten luxury, a distant, hazy memory I could barely recall. My brain transformed into a hyper-efficient sponge, soaking up every YouTube tutorial, often played at 1.5x speed to save time, every obscure forum discussion thread, reading hundreds of comments, every tedious, dry blog post I could find on the intricacies of e-commerce, digital marketing, supply chain management, customer psychology, conversion optimization, search engine optimization, email marketing. Every piece of fragmented information was a vital clue, a piece of the puzzle I was desperate to solve. My days were still shackled to the warehouse job, my body mindlessly moving boxes, enduring the harsh demands of my supervisors, the physical strain, the mind-numbing repetition, but my mind was feverishly building a new future, brick by painful brick, in the quiet, stolen hours of the night. The exhaustion was immense, a heavy cloak that threatened to smother me, but the adrenaline of this new pursuit, the glimmer of hope, kept me going, pushing past the pain. The initial attempts were, predictably, a string of spectacular, humbling failures that almost broke my spirit, making me question my sanity, making me doubt my decision to embark on this impossible quest. I tried selling novelty gadgets, quirky, cheap items I thought would appeal to impulsive buyers, trying to ride on viral trends I barely understood, chasing fads. But the products often didn't arrive on time, if at all. Customers became irate, demanding refunds, leaving scathing reviews on my fledgling store, a public record of my incompetence, and I found myself drowning in endless disputes, negative feedback, and chargebacks that ate into my meager funds, leaving me even more broke than before, sometimes even in the negative. The obstacles were monumental, seemingly insurmountable. Finding truly reliable suppliers amidst a vast, treacherous sea of scammers and unreliable vendors, navigating the labyrinthine, often confusing world of e-commerce platforms like Shopify and AliExpress, understanding the frustrating intricacies of international shipping, customs duties, taxes, and returns policies. Each failed attempt was a brutal lesson, a painful tuition fee I absolutely couldn't afford, yet I paid it with grim, teeth-gritting determination, convinced that each failure brought me closer to success, that it was a necessary part of the learning curve. Competitors, established giants in the market with massive marketing budgets and decades of experience, seemed to effortlessly dominate, their polished, professional advertisements mocking my clumsy, amateurish attempts, making me feel like a child playing dress-up in an adult world. But I learned in silence, absorbing every piece of feedback, every data point, every subtle shift in market trends, every nuance of human behavior online. Every mistake was a data point, a critical piece of information that needed to be analyzed, every fall a chance to refine my approach, to understand what not to do, what to improve, what to eliminate entirely. I kept meticulous notes, a secret ledger, tracking every cent spent on ads, every return processed, every customer complaint, every tiny detail that could provide insight into this bewildering new world. This wasn't just a business, it was a rigorous self-taught education in the harshest university of all, the real world, unforgiving and relentlessly demanding. The mantra began to solidify in my mind, hammering itself into my subconscious with relentless force, overriding every doubt, every whisper of self-defeat. Making money wasn't just about working hard. It was about directing money correctly, strategically, and with relentless focus. It was about leverage, not just brute effort. It was about thinking, not just doing. Every dollar, every cent, every tiny fragment of capital had to be an investment, a calculated strategic move, a precise step forward, not a frivolous expense, not an impulsive purchase. This wasn't just a business. It was a complex, high-stakes chess game against an invisible opponent, and I had to learn to think several moves ahead, anticipating challenges, identifying opportunities, and planning my counter-moves before my opponent, the market, the competition, could even make its play. My colleagues at the warehouse, accustomed to my quiet, tired demeanor, my slumped shoulders, my general air of exhaustion and resignation, began to notice the subtle but profound change in me. I was no longer joining their casual conversations during lunch breaks, no longer complaining about the management or the miserable pay, no longer lamenting my lot in life or dreaming of a lottery win. My eyes, once dull with perpetual fatigue, now held a focused intensity, a distant, determined glint that spoke of an inner world they couldn't fathom, a secret ambition burning brightly, consuming me. While they gossiped or scrolled through mindless social media feeds, wasting precious minutes, I'd be hunched over my phone or a borrowed tablet, meticulously researching a new supplier, analyzing a product's market potential, sketching out a new website layout or a more effective marketing funnel in my small, worn notebook, a constant whirl of ideas and complex calculations filling my mind. The initial capital, that precious first investment, came from a small, almost forgotten source. An old dusty pocket watch that had belonged to my grandfather, a cherished family heirloom, but one I desperately needed to sacrifice for a chance at freedom, at a new life, a real life. I sold it at a local pawn shop for a modest $100. This wasn't just money. It was a potent symbol of my unwavering commitment, a tangible representation of the old life I was willing to shed, the emotional attachments I was willing to sever for a chance at a new one. It was a painful, necessary break with the past, a commitment to a future I couldn't yet see clearly. I poured that $100, every single penny, into micro-advertising campaigns on Facebook and Instagram, meticulously targeting specific demographics with laser precision, creating multiple ad sets to test different angles, different copy, different visuals, and the bare minimum for basic website hosting. It was a terrifying, exhilarating leap of faith. A single shot at redemption that consumed my every waking thought, every ounce of my being. My first major breakthrough, the moment the dark clouds parted and a sliver of sunlight broke through, illuminating a path I had only glimpsed in my dreams, came from a deep, relentless dive into market research. I realized that the broader e-commerce market was oversaturated, a chaotic, cutthroat battleground dominated by giants with seemingly limitless resources and instant brand recognition. But there were countless tiny, almost invisible niches that were underserved, practically begging for someone to fill the void, for someone to truly understand their specific, often frustrating needs. My focus shifted relentlessly to pet products, specifically targeting obscure yet highly sought-after items that solve specific, everyday problems for pet owners, problems that the big box stores completely overlooked, dismissing them as too niche or unprofitable, not worth their time. Think less about generic dog food or basic collars, and more about ergonomic, elevated cat bowls designed for senior felines with arthritis, enabling them to eat without pain, improving their quality of life, or specialized, anxiety-reducing training collars that use gentle vibrations instead of harsh shocks for highly sensitive puppies, promoting positive reinforcement, or even intelligent, automated pet feeders that dispensed food precisely based on a timed schedule and monitored consumption through a smartphone app, providing peace of mind for busy owners concerned about their pet's nutrition. Finding my first actual customer felt like an impossible feat, a mythical quest, a moment I'd been dreaming of for months, almost afraid to believe it would happen. I remembered the distinct ping notification echoing through my silent apartment on my phone. A small order for a peculiar pet grooming tool, a high-efficiency de-shedding brush for long-haired breeds that promised to reduce shedding by 90%, a problem I knew many pet owners faced constantly. It was a minuscule sale, perhaps a $10 profit after all the platform fees and ad spend. But to me, it was like $1,000,000, a profound validation of everything I had been working towards. It was concrete proof that the concept worked, that my endless hours of effort, my sacrifices, my unwavering belief weren't in vain. I still get goosebumps thinking about that moment, that tiny, triumphant chime of success echoing in the quiet night, a sound of hope, a whispered promise of what was to come. That first small victory ignited a smoldering fire within me that no amount of previous failures, no amount of ridicule or doubt from others could ever extinguish. It was the spark that became a self-sustaining flame, illuminating my path forward, brighter than any warehouse fluorescent, hotter than any shame. What were your breakthrough moments, those pivotal instances when you truly believed in yourself, when the gears finally clicked into place and you knew you were on the right path, come hell or high water? I'm eager to read about your experiences in the comments below. The meticulously crafted plan, born from countless sleepless nights, fueled by sheer desperation, and refined by relentless trial and error, was now fully operational and gaining undeniable, accelerating momentum. It felt like pushing a massive boulder uphill for years, and now suddenly, it was beginning to roll, gaining speed with every push. The initial successes, though humble in the grand scheme of things, were the consistent, vital fuel that propelled me relentlessly forward. Each small victory, a testament to my burgeoning strategy and a profound validation of my new mindset. My niche strategy within pet products, focusing on solving specific, often overlooked, and deeply felt problems for pet owners, proved to be far more effective than I could have ever imagined. Products like a specialized portable paw cleaner for muddy walks, designed for city dwellers who hated dirty floors and constantly tracked mud, or an interactive puzzle-solving toy designed to alleviate pet anxiety during long periods of owner absence, resonated deeply and powerfully with my target audience, who had found no other viable, convenient solutions on the market. They were desperate for these very things, and my products offered them immediate relief. Each sale, each heartfelt, positive customer review that detailed how the product had changed their lives, each testimonial from a grateful pet owner saying how my product had genuinely improved their pet's life and their own, fueled both my accelerating financial growth and my burgeoning confidence, a quiet, internal affirmation that I was not only on the right path, but that I was making a tangible, positive difference in people's lives, solving real problems. Every dollar earned was immediately, carefully, and strategically reinvested back into scaling the business, following a strict principle of compound growth, where every return was designed to generate more returns, creating a self-sustaining, ever-expanding cycle of expansion. I increased my advertising budget exponentially, scaling up winning ad campaigns, refined my targeting even further using advanced analytics and A/B testing to understand audience psychology, demographic shifts, and purchasing patterns. I experimented with new product lines based on emerging market trends and direct customer feedback, constantly iterating and improving. Crucially, I began forging stronger, more direct, and more exclusive relationships with reliable, high-quality manufacturers and suppliers overseas, cutting out middlemen, which not only reduced costs significantly, but ensured faster shipping times, superior product quality, and significantly better profit margins. This was the true beginning of the scaling process, a methodical, deliberate expansion from a precarious one-man operation to a budding, formidable enterprise, meticulously planned and executed. I had cultivated a new, invaluable trait, a steely, inner core that had been dormant for too long, suppressed by years of struggle, self-doubt, and the pervasive fear of failure. Cold-blooded rationality. When faced with obstacles, which were still plentiful and often daunting, presenting themselves in new and unexpected forms, from sudden, unpredictable supply chain disruptions to drastic, unexpected changes in advertising platform algorithms, or even aggressive competitor attacks, I no longer crumbled under pressure or succumbed to despair. Instead, I embraced them as complex puzzles to be solved, as opportunities to refine my systems, sharpen my strategic thinking, and build an almost unbreakable resilience, an unshakable core. There was a particularly grueling period when a major, international shipping carrier, on whom I heavily relied for my global supply chain, went on a sudden, unannounced, prolonged strike, causing massive delays, lost packages, and a tsunami of angry, frustrated customer emails threatening to derail everything I had meticulously built. The old Daniel, the one who barely survived, who was crushed by every setback, would have spiraled into a complete panic, paralyzed by the overwhelming negativity, convinced it was the inevitable end, that all his hard work was for naught. The new Daniel, however, remained remarkably calm, his mind a whirlwind of focused problem-solving, his hands already typing, his brain already strategizing. I immediately implemented a proactive, highly transparent communication strategy, emailing every single affected customer, not with excuses or apologies, but with sincere apologies, providing transparent, real-time updates on the situation, explaining the unforeseen circumstances, and, as a tangible gesture of goodwill, offering a small complimentary gift with their delayed order or a significant discount on their next purchase. I even offered full refunds to those who couldn't wait, proactively. This meticulous, empathetic approach didn't just mitigate the immediate crisis. It transformed frustrated customers into incredibly loyal advocates, building a reputation for reliability, transparency, and exceptional service that money couldn't buy and competitors couldn't replicate, effectively turning a disaster into a relationship-building opportunity, a testament to true customer obsession and foresight. I'd remember the old humiliations, the condescending glances from my uncle, the desperate scramble for rent money, the empty refrigerator, the burning shame of the grocery store checkout. But now I looked at them not with bitterness or anger, not with self-pity or regret, but with the quiet, profound satisfaction of vindication, of a battle hard won, of a journey completed against overwhelming odds. There was no arrogance in my demeanor, no desire to gloat, just the deep-seated peace and calm confidence that comes from a hard-fought victory against what once seemed like impossible odds. The growth was truly exponential, a whirlwind of calculated expansion that felt both exhilarating and terrifying, like riding a rapidly accelerating train. The Daniel's Pet Solutions e-commerce store, once a tiny speck in the vast competitive online ocean, became a recognized, respected, and highly profitable brand within its niche, known not just for its innovative products, but for its exceptional quality and unwavering customer service. As the volume of orders surged, the need for help became undeniable, overwhelming. I simply couldn't do it all alone anymore, no matter how many hours I worked, no matter how much I optimized. I hired my first employee, a part-time customer, service representative, then a virtual assistant to handle the initial stages of order fulfillment and basic inquiries. These hires weren't just about offloading tasks. They were about building a team, delegating, trusting. The administrative burden on me lightened significantly, freeing up my time and mental energy, allowing me to focus more on overarching strategy, identifying new market expansion opportunities, and developing truly innovative product lines that solved emerging problems in the pet care space, constantly pushing the boundaries of what was possible. My professional network grew organically, expanding far beyond my initial expectations, connecting me with other successful e-commerce entrepreneurs, some of whom became invaluable mentors, sharing critical insights, opening doors to new collaborations, and providing crucial, actionable advice on everything from scaling ad spend to legal compliance, international business practices, and navigating complex market dynamics. I launched a second brand, then a third, each targeting a slightly different, equally underserved niche. Perhaps sustainable home goods, or ergonomic office supplies, or specialized outdoor adventure gear, applying the same principles of meticulous market research, data-driven strategic marketing, and an unwavering commitment to exceptional customer experience. The money was no longer just trickling in, it was flowing steadily, predictably, substantially, and reliably, like a well-managed river, accumulating in my once empty bank account, a testament to months of disciplined effort and strategic planning. But it wasn't just about accumulating wealth for its own sake, for personal gain or material possessions. It was about creating a sustainable, diversified, and resilient financial ecosystem, a multi-layered fortress against future uncertainty and market fluctuations, a guarantee of security and opportunity for my family and for future generations. I began meticulously diversifying my assets, understanding that true wealth was about more than just a single income stream, no matter how robust. My first major investment outside of e-commerce was a small, multi-unit residential property in a rapidly developing part of the city, a direct, tangible result of my initial observation about urban revitalization on that fateful bus ride. I spent weeks, then months, meticulously researching property values, analyzing rental yields, projecting neighborhood growth rates, and understanding every nuance of local regulations, zoning laws, and property management best practices. I secured a modest commercial loan, carefully leveraging the consistent, predictable cash flow from my thriving e-commerce businesses as collateral, a testament to my newfound credibility with financial institutions. The initial repairs and renovations were largely hands-on. I was there daily, supervising contractors, learning every minute detail of property acquisition, management, and tenant relations, expanding my skill set far beyond digital marketing and supply chains into the tangible brick-and-mortar world of real estate. It was a completely different beast from e-commerce with its own unique challenges and learning curves, but the core principles of identifying unmet demand, strategic investment, disciplined management, and long-term vision remained universally applicable, allowing me to translate my entrepreneurial skills. This early real estate venture quickly proved immensely profitable, providing another robust stream of passive income and solidifying my financial base, effectively reducing my reliance on any single revenue source and providing true diversification. Next, I turned my attention to the dynamic, ever-evolving technology sector, fascinated by the boundless potential of innovation and disruption, and eager to contribute to it in a meaningful way. I started with smaller, calculated investments in promising tech startups, leveraging my newly acquired network to gain access to early-stage funding rounds that were typically inaccessible to outsiders, often reserved for established venture capitalists. I wasn't just throwing money at trendy ideas. I was performing rigorous due diligence, scrutinizing business plans, conducting extensive interviews with founders, analyzing market potential, and identifying companies with strong, visionary leadership and truly unique, scalable solutions to existing problems, many of which I recognized from my own entrepreneurial journey. Some of these investments were roaring successes, multiplying my initial capital many times over, providing significant capital gains, while others were less so, proving that even with careful planning, risk was inherent. But I always learned, always adapted, always refined my investment thesis based on new data and insights, treating every outcome as a lesson. The biggest breakthrough came when I made a significant calculated investment in a small, yet brilliant AI-driven logistics startup that promised to revolutionize supply chain management, a direct link to the very challenges I had faced and overcome in my own e-commerce journey. This investment grew exponentially, multiplying its value many times over, dwarfing many of my previous successes and providing a monumental boost to my overall net worth, cementing my position as a serious, recognized investor in the tech landscape, a new chapter in my professional identity. Today, Daniel, the man who once stared at a grim 40/17 balance, who walked miles to work in the freezing cold and driving rain, who begged his uncle for a loan, who fought for every single dollar and every inch of progress with the desperation of a cornered animal, inhabits a fundamentally different reality, a life beyond his wildest former imaginings, a dream made tangible. The numbers in my bank account are now figures I wouldn't have dared to conjure even in my most desperate dreams. Figures that signify true financial freedom, profound autonomy, and an unshakable sense of security that permeates every aspect of my life. My e-commerce ventures continue to thrive, seamlessly managed by a dedicated, empowered team of professionals I've personally hired, mentored, and inspired, many of whom now share in the company's success through equitable profit sharing programs and stock options, fostering a culture of shared ownership and ambition. My real estate portfolio has expanded significantly, now encompassing not just residential, but also lucrative commercial properties and even a stake in a burgeoning hospitality group, generating consistent, robust income streams from multiple, diverse assets. And my tech investments have blossomed, providing substantial capital gains and diversified future growth potential, placing me at the forefront of innovation and providing opportunities to shape the future. My standard of living? I no longer wake up in a cold sweat, dreading the morning commute and the harsh realities of another grueling, unfulfilling day. I wake up in a spacious, sun-drenched penthouse apartment overlooking the bustling city skyline, with panoramic views of the very port where that transformative idea first sparked, a constant, poignant reminder of where it all began. My biggest concern is now scheduling my next strategic meeting at the headquarters of my own diversified holding company, which now oversees multiple successful ventures across various sectors, creating hundreds of jobs and impacting countless lives. I travel extensively, not out of necessity, not for stressful business trips, but for leisure and profound exploration, experiencing the world's wonders, immersing myself in cultures I once only dreamed of from the confines of my warehouse cubicle. I've hiked ancient trails in the Himalayas, explored vibrant, bustling markets in Marrakesh, and witnessed breathtaking natural phenomena from the Amazon rainforest to the Arctic Circle, all with my beloved family by my side, sharing these incredible moments. I can provide abundantly, lavishly for my family, ensuring they never experience the financial anxieties, the quiet desperation, the constant fear of scarcity that haunted my own early life, that scarred me so deeply. My incredible wife, Sarah, now works as a senior project manager within one of my companies, her creativity finally unleashed, her talents flourishing, and her professional contributions valued and celebrated. A true partner in every sense. Our children attend excellent schools, pursue their passions without financial limitations, whether it's music, art, or science. Their futures bright, unburdened by the financial struggles that once defined my existence, free to dream big. My mother, who once worried endlessly about my future, burdened by my struggles, now beams with pride, her eyes full of joy witnessing the fruition of her own sacrifices and her son's perseverance. And my once condescending uncle? He actually called me last month not for a casual chat or to offer unsolicited advice, but specifically asking for investment advice, for guidance on managing his own portfolio, recognizing my expertise and success. The irony isn't lost on me. It's a quiet, satisfying symphony of vindication, a testament to how far Daniel has come. But this journey, let me be abundantly clear, was not a fairy tale filled with sudden windfalls or lucky breaks, nor was it a smooth, effortless path paved with gold. It was a relentless, often brutal uphill battle, a profound test of endurance, intellect, and sheer unyielding will. I sacrificed countless nights of sleep, pushed my physical and mental limits to the breaking point, enduring moments where I thought I couldn't go on, where every fiber of my being screamed for me to quit. I made difficult, often isolating choices that many of my old friends and even some family members couldn't comprehend or approve of, thinking I was crazy, that I was wasting my time on pipe dreams, risking everything for nothing. There were moments of crushing doubt, of overwhelming fear, of near collapse when the weight of responsibility felt unbearable, when the temptation to revert to my old, comfortable misery was almost irresistible, when only sheer stubbornness and an almost irrational, unshakable belief in my ultimate goal kept me from giving up entirely. It wasn't about everything turned out perfectly, without effort or pain. It was about, there was a significant, often painful cost, but I ultimately succeeded through unwavering dedication, relentless self-improvement, and strategic foresight, one calculated step at a time, learning from every stumble. And even now, with these new levels of success come new challenges, new responsibilities, and new, even more ambitious goals. The pursuit of growth, both personal and financial, is a continuous, exhilarating, and deeply fulfilling process. It's not just about the money. It's about the person you become on the journey, the transformation you undergo, the lessons you internalize, the resilience you build, and the impact you can have. The numbers in my account had changed, yes. They were no longer a source of pain and shame, but a powerful, undeniable testament to what is truly possible when one refuses to surrender, when one embraces continuous learning, and when one adapts relentlessly to every setback. But more profoundly, my entire perspective on numbers, on wealth, on opportunity, on resilience, on the true meaning of success, and on life itself, had fundamentally shifted. Now, when I look back at that day with 4017 in my pocket, at the defeated, hopeless man I was then, my greatest achievement isn't the monetary value in my bank account. It's the invaluable lessons learned about markets, about people, about myself, about human psychology and behavior. The mental fortitude forged through fire and adversity, the problem-solving skills honed through countless failures and hard-won triumphs, and the complete, profound, and irreversible transformation of my mindset from one of scarcity to one of abundance, from passive reaction to proactive creation. Making money was merely a significant byproduct of this intense internal metamorphosis. The true wealth was the journey of self-discovery, the relentless pursuit of knowledge, the development of unwavering discipline, and the unyielding spirit of resilience that I unearthed within myself, a wellspring of inner strength I never knew existed. Every single person watching this, I believe with every fiber of my being, has a potential Daniel inside them, waiting for that spark of ambition to ignite, waiting for the courage to shed their past limitations, their fears, and the often restrictive expectations of society. The critical step is not just to see that spark, but to ignite it with unwavering action, relentless learning, persistent experimentation, and a profound, unshakable pursuit of your own boundless potential. Don't wait for a miracle to happen. Go out there and make your own. What is that one small, deliberate, purposeful step you can commit to taking today to start your own incredible transformation?